Hi everyone, it's Pastor Brenda. Thanks for joining us in this format. Gather your roommates, gather your family, gather your small group, and have these conversations I'm going to lead you into because some really good ones going on. We're in our last message on this series of our trust issues with God, being a mix of fear and faith. There's a song that we sing at our church together. We sing it often. Jesus, I Believe. It's by Big Daddy Weave. And the person who has lead on that is Jess. If you see, join us on Fridays or Facebook Live, whatever, Jess sings it. And the way she sings it, especially near the end, whereas there's that lyric that says, help my unbelief, Jesus, I believe. She sings it with such honesty. It's haunting, it's raw, it's just so honest that I can't hear that song without Jess's delivery of it that just strikes me as so raw. So that lyric actually comes out of a Bible story we're going to read tonight, we're going to study tonight. It's found in Mark 9, and it's verses 14 through 29. Please read that with your group. I'm going to just give you a summary of that story because it's a story about a father who cares for a son who is tormented by seizures and by a spirit of self-destruction. This boy needed constant watching because he would throw himself into a fire or water to self-harm himself at any moment. This is the father of the son desperate for help. He is exhausted, he's tired, he's watching his son at all times, and he doesn't know how to help his son. His son needs something to change in his life, something to stop the seizures or the demon that's oppressing him or the mental health problem. He just needs to stop the self-harm. But the father has got to be on at all times, watching his son, talking to his son, making sure his son is in the right mind, because at any moment his son could die. And this father is just exhausted. And in that exhausted state, he goes to the spiritual leaders and asks for help. So if you read in the scriptures, this is how the story opens. And then you find these spiritual leaders made up of the Pharisees and the disciples having this discussion about how to help the boy. They're not talking to the father. They're not helping the boy. They're having this great big spiritual debate on what's going on with this boy. And whose fault is it? And what should we do? Blah, blah, blah. Very much a lack of compassion. Probably talking over the father. Probably pointing fingers at the father, like this may be all his fault. Like he needs to have any more exhaustion put on him. Probably offering him some platitudes, but never entering into the pain of the father or the pain of the son. Even the disciples removed themselves from the pain of the boy and just got into this knowledge debate. Knowledge debates never get to the issue or the matter, do they? So when someone says in this knowledge debate of why does God allow pain in this world, the real issue is God really going to be good? But no, if you say in the knowledge debate, you miss the whole picture. Meanwhile, the father is desperate and exhausted. So Jesus enters into the church holy huddle, and he says in verse 19, "You faithless people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." Yikes. Not what anyone wanted to hear, right? But then Jesus turns in verse 21, he turns to the father and shows compassion, asking, how long has this been happening? Finally, the father feels heard. The father feels seen, like there might be some hope for this situation. And with that, just that flicker of hope, verse 24, the father cries out, "I do believe, but help my overcome my unbelief." There's those lyrics. There's that statement. hardly a profound statement, right? Hardly a bold declaration of faith. Or is it? Remember that we are this mix of fear and faith. So here's your first question for the conversation. When you sing, Jesus, I believe, help my unbelief, God, Jesus, I believe, what are you really singing? You can just hit pause right here and have this conversation with your people. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Do you have a great conversation? We are this mix of fear and faith. We live in times of holy tension. And holy tension, defined again, is the discomfort of being stuck in between, but knowing that if you can make a brave and vulnerable decision, something holy is going to happen. But too often in that tension and that stuckness, it's so uncomfortable, we will jump to a conclusion. We'll try to make an end to this tension before the larger story of what God is doing can become reality. You know what I mean, right? This is we talked about earlier about our brain filling in that gap. So we lean towards suspicion or we lean towards trust. And we're just cutting off the larger story that God is building here. So in this holy tension, in this mix of fear and faith, what are the things you can trust God for right now in your life? In your exhausted state, let's take a moment and think about these things that you can just try to grasp and thank God for. Is it the beautiful sunrise you saw this morning? Is it the laughter of your child? For me, is it looking at the great pictures of the trip I took last weekend with my grandchildren to Jamestown, and the memories and the laughter that those pictures can bring back to me, no matter how painful life is right now. How about that perfectly brewed cup of coffee in the morning and just how you get to hold it in your hand and the warmth of it and the smell of it, and that moment in your exhausted state, you actually feel something good. I don't drink coffee at all, but I hear that's really important. What can you find right now that can bring you a moment of joy, no matter what is going on? Practicing gratitude invites joy into our lives. When you practice gratitude, you are acknowledging that there is joy to be had and that you have enough to share. Even now, even in your exhausted, where this problem is going on that is so huge and you need God's deliverance for, even in that state, there is enough joy to be had by you. Scarcity tells you that you are not enough, which causes this fear inside of you, which then causes you to choose suspicion over trust. Gratitude for even the littlest of things invites joy in, and then suddenly you realize that you are worthy of this joy, and scarcity then can't speak so loudly. Anne Lamott, who's an author, said this. I wish I had thought of it, because this is something I would love to have coined. It's so brilliant. Joy is the best makeup. So so brilliant. Learning to trust this big God leads to a practice of gratitude, which then leads to joy, which then leads to the best makeup. So what I'm saying is, boy, even in this pain that I'm in right now, if I can stop for a moment and find some joy, to practice some gratitude, joy is the best makeup. The painful situation, the overwhelmingness, the exhaustion of it hasn't really gone away, but at least I look good because I got joy going on. You know what I mean by that, don't you? Oh, that helps so much. Choosing joy is giving us some power back over what is stressing us out. Powerlessness is hard to admit. We don't like living powerless. Oh, not at all. So sometimes because we live in this mix of fear and faith, we just do feel powerless. We feel overwhelmed and we're exhausted. And is God ever going to answer our prayers or fix the situation? Or what is God's larger story? That, oh, those what if, that makes us feel powerless. So to not trust God is taking our power back. Or to make a bargain with God is taking our power back so that we feel like we have some power over something. And in that, we keep the lie because we believe these 5 wrong things about God. And I'm reading these again from the book, The Cure, and this is from page 37. And I referenced this a couple weeks ago. So I'm just repeating, but it applies right now again. When we feel powerless, we believe these 5 lies about God. God can't satisfy me as much as this sin. I've always been this way. I don't believe I'm powerful enough to change that. There is something fundamentally wrong with me. I don't believe God has been fully good to me, and I'm going to feel like a failure anyway, so I might as well enjoy it. So we are this mix of fear and faith. We believe as we are full of unbelief. Now, powerlessness does not mean we get to feel unsafe. It's very important. There's a book I recommend you read. It's named Try Softer by Andy Kolber. And she put this together, and I put it on a slide, which is going to be included here in the comments, so you can look at it closer. But this is what safety feels like. She deals with trauma. She's a psychologist. And this is what she has put together for what safety feels like. Safety in our bodies feels solid, responsive, and aware. Safety in our relationships feels like connection, vulnerability, and trust. And safety with God feels like connection, belonging, and mystery. Okay? It's on the slide. You want to remember these things. So first, safety in our body. What needs to change in your life so that you feel safe in your very own body? So you feel solid, responsive, and aware. Let me ask this other question. What lies are you telling yourself that makes you feel unsafe in your own body? You need to make some changes. Powerlessness does not mean you feel unsafe, okay? In relationships, safety feels like connection, vulnerability, and trust. What do you need to change to feel safe in your relationships? In a series a couple times ago, I mentioned this new type of science called two-person neuroscience, or 2PN. So it's a neuroscience studying of the brain, and they're figuring out how we co-regulate each other. When we're together in a relationship, in a vulnerable relationship, in a trusting relationship, our heartbeats are even in sync with each other. Like we go around in our worlds and we are synchronizing with others all of the time, especially when we're in healthy relationships. Okay? This is what safety in relationships feels like. 2-3 messages ago, I talked about the science of loneliness and how when you become lonely, your brain goes into self-preservation. And in that self-preservation, you actually start reading people's looks towards you wrong. Your loneliness is lying to you and saying that these people are judging you, but it's only your brain that has been changed because loneliness is changing your brain. Again, safety in relationships looks like trust and vulnerability. Then I want to read to you from this blog from Summer Gross. She's one of my favorite podcasters. She's a writer, and she uses brain science and contemplative practices to talk about the things of God. So she just wrote this. I'm going to include the link to her whole blog also in the comments, okay? It is rare when we can be in a moment and realize that even though we were overwhelmingly stuck, and God seemed to be far away, inactive, ignoring you, or hating on you, that God was never any of these. Rather, God is moving us forward out of whatever we are experiencing. God is constantly working, and more often than not, we are unaware. Interpersonal neurobiology tells us that sometimes fight or flight lies, and we can only pursue the unknown holding onto a secure hand of flesh and blood. When fight or flight is out of proportion, we can regulate our emotions to another trustworthy brain. We can learn to pursue risk holding tight onto the hands of safe people. Said another way, fight or flight can best be quieted while looking into the eyes of someone who promises to walk with us, who promises not to leave a non-anxious presence. And as we experience their calming presence over a period of time, we begin to trust. But here's another truth of brain science. Trust takes time to build. It can't be forced. It's built organically, one trustworthy experience after another. And this is a quote from her husband. He said to her, "See what happens when you surrender to trust, I heard? Surrender can clear the way to joy." And I've come back to joy again here, right? This is what safety in relationships feels like. And may I just put a plug in? When we meet together as a church on Friday nights, whether in person or whether through Zoom, across 3 different time zones, we are building these kind of connections and these kind of belongings, and we're sharing our conversations and our stories, and trust is being built and connection is being built. And again, we're a hybrid. We're meeting across Zoom and in person, and there is safety in our meetings, and I invite you to be hungry enough to join us on Friday nights to do that. Trust is evidence-based. Trust builds trust. I've been saying that throughout this series. Now, thirdly, safety in a relationship with God. I'm going to repeat these 3 things and notice. It is connection, belonging, and mystery. 2 of the things we're finding together here on Friday nights. May you be having this with your small group. May you be having this with your roommates and with your family. Connection and belonging, and mystery. Not certainty from God. Not the kind of God that's small that you can fit into a box that you can completely understand before you have faith in. Not creating a God within your own rules so that this is the God you understand, this is the God you feel safe with. That is actually not true at all. It is this mystery of God that makes you curiously comfortable. In the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew 5:45, Jesus taught, "God causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous." With a certain God, or with a God who you follow by a formula, it is like, I am good, so God's going to rain and give me the sun. I have been good. I've obeyed all the 10 commandments. And so God's going to give me this blessing back. But Jesus taught here, he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good. Like those who are evil get the sun and the rain also. This is not a God of formula. It's not a God that's easy to understand. It is a God of mystery. It is a God of the larger story. And amazingly, the more I learn about this God, the more I become curiously comfortable with who God is. So this is my last question for you guys to have this conversation together to end this series with everything we've gone through with our trust issues. And now we get to this point. Here's this question. How does the mystery of God make you curiously comfortable We began with trust issues, and we're going to end up here with mystery and find out that's where our safety is. Have that conversation together. So before you have that conversation, this is the end. I want to pray a blessing over you, and then I really want you to dig into this conversation, because may the mystery of God continue to draw you into this larger story. I think I just said a blessing. That could also be a prayer, right? So, dear triune God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, you who cannot be defined by our words, you who are the holder of the larger story, you who are good. You who are good even though I am unaware of how you are good at times. You who have brought together relationships and conversations and brain science to teach me so much that trust builds trust. And in this safety of connection, belonging, and mystery, I can have a relationship with you. In the beginning, weeks ago, I think our trust issues made us feel unsafe. But now I pray with just these conversations and this Bible teaching that at the end here, we come to see that in your mystery, we are the safest. That is a really big thought. Bless these conversations. Bless the connection and the belonging these people are having together. And God, bless this larger story church who is teaching such things. Amen. See you guys.